Welcome to CoinShares interview. Today, we are meeting with Henri Arslanian. Henri is the co-founder of 9Blocks Capital Management, a crypto hedge fund. He's also a TV host on CNBC Arabia and a professor in Hong Kong. He's going to explain to us everything about investment and financial education. Hi Henri, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, very excited to be here.
I would like to go back in time, if you don't mind. What first sparked your interest in crypto?
It's a very interesting, the crypto world, when you fall into it, you follow it properly. I'm a lawyer by background. I grew up in Canada. I moved to China afterwards, and I was in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I started my career. I was a hedge fund lawyer, and then I was in banking. I was doing prime brokerage. And I remember looking at the trading floor, looking at the bank, and saying, why do we need so many humans? And those years were the early days of fintech. Fintech was just a term that people were starting to use, and I just got curious into it. And then that's how I discovered Bitcoin. I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. I remember reading about a guy who was a French guy actually, setting up a crypto exchange in Hong Kong. And I said, wow, this Bitcoin thing that I've been reading about. And then in the first quarter of 2014, I organized my first Bitcoin event in Hong Kong at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce called Bitcoin Could It Be the Future of Money? And to give you an idea at the time, after I organized the event, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce got numbers of complaints saying, what is Henri Arslanian doing with this money laundering thing? It affects the reputation of a chamber. And the rest is history. I got into it. I really started reading about it and I fell into that rabbit hole. And in 2016, when I joined PwC, we set up the crypto team. Initially, it was me and a one-page business plan. And obviously, the team grew to, we were at one point over 400 people in 25 countries, only focused on crypto. So really, since 2016, I've been also in it full-time professionally, and I enjoy every second of it.
It's a bit personal, but you were born in Montreal, Canada. I think that your family background comes from Armenia.
Exactly.
You studied in Hong Kong, China. Now you live in Dubai. Do you think that made you more in tune with the concept of global currency, such as Bitcoin?
The world is a very interesting place, right? So, I think I was very fortunate, as you mentioned, like growing up in Montreal, we become bilingual. I have an Armenian background, and obviously living in China, I speak Chinese. I lived in Hong Kong, so I saw a lot of the global perspective. I think what really I found interesting with Bitcoin, on a global perspective, was really the potential of having something that is really decentralized. For example, when you go through history, you look at different leaders, governments, and empires that we've seen. Often the biggest flaws is not the technology, is not what is really people. It's mistakes that leaders will do. And there's kind of something beautiful in Bitcoin that actually you just need to trust code, you need to trust mathematics. And I think overall, when I look at the overall digital asset space, one thing that really attracts me is that it really allows everybody to have access to it. For example, one of the things I found the most shocking in the financial world today, that the one thing that you have no control in your life is where you're born. And that has a material impact on what type of financial services you can access. If somebody today is born in Iran, is born in North Korea, is born in Syria, is born in Lebanon, and the list goes on, something that they have no control on, they've pretty much cut off from the rest of the world when it comes to financial services. These individuals did not elect their government, they didn't choose to be born there. Why are we cutting entire people from entire countries? And that's what I like about decentralized digital currencies, and it kind of enables that from that perspective. Now, I'm a big believer the world is very global, the world is changing a lot as well, whether it's geopolitics, economics, and even financial markets more broadly. And I think Bitcoin is just another example of how the world is changing from that perspective.
You mentioned the perception of Bitcoin 10 years ago. It was quite dangerous for your own reputation. So what made you stick to it?
I think it's very difficult for people that are entering the crypto space now to understand really the headaches we went through in the early days. To give you an idea, I remember when I first bought my first Bitcoin in Hong Kong back in the day, I remember there was like an ATM machine, a Bitcoin ATM we used to have in Hong Kong. There was an exchange at a time called ANX, which is now called OSL, where literally you used to go give them cash to be able to buy some crypto. And I remember the first time that I bought my Bitcoin, I had to wire money to Kraken's exchange in Japan, to a bank account in Tokyo, to be able to access basically the crypto exchange. So I think it's very difficult for people that are entering the space now to realize how difficult it was literally to buy digital assets back in the day. But that was the least of your troubles. The problem is, as soon as your bank or any regulated financial institution knew that you held crypto or that you were involved in digital assets, they would cut you off. I've seen numerous entrepreneurs who've lost not only their businesses, because the banks cut them off with 30-day notice. But not only the company, they also shut their own accounts. For me, it's happened multiple times. Banks that I've had accounts with would give me a call and say, Mr. Arslanian, we're shutting down your accounts. And I'd be, why? They wouldn't tell me. Afterwards, they tell me, yeah, because let's say you're a PwC partner in charge of crypto, or we see you're active in digital assets. And so there was really a lot of actually, I would say, discrimination against the digital assets industry. In many cases, that was unwarranted. And that was actually, especially in the US a couple of years ago, and that had many trickle events. But also, I think the beauty of Bitcoin is it's decentralized. The problem with Bitcoin is that it's decentralized, in the sense that there's no CEO of Bitcoin. There's no PR agent representing the Bitcoin network. And because of this, the Bitcoin network doesn't have a message, if you want. So it's very easy for media and others to, as soon as there's something negative that happens in the space, to come and actually cover the digital asset space in a negative stance. Nobody talks that every 10 minutes, a block gets created on Bitcoin and things are operating perfectly well. Nobody talks that actually people now can transfer money around the world seamlessly 24/7, instantaneously. But if there's a scandal, there's an event of fraud, there's a scam, of course it's all over the media. And I think for this reason, the crypto industry has had a bad name. Are we there? Are we at an area where everybody understands Bitcoin and digital assets? Absolutely not. I think one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry is education. I think everybody, whether it's your viewers, us in the space, I believe we have a moral obligation to actually kind of educate people, to understand what it is. And I believe that's a privilege as well to do so. You may love Bitcoin, you may hate it, but at least you have a moral duty to try to understand it, and then you can make a better decision on it.
Let's talk about 9 Blocks Capital Management, your hedge fund. What is the thesis behind it?
So a couple of years ago, obviously, I've been in the hedge fund space for many years. I started as a hedge fund lawyer. I was in prime brokerage for many years. And I truly believe that a lot of institutional investors will enter the crypto space, but initially they want to do so by fund managers or fund of funds that are regulated or platforms that are regulated. And that's how actually 9 Blocks was born. The idea was, how can we build a business that generates consistent risk-adjusted returns to investors, but at the same time is regulated and operates by the global international best standards that a lot of institutional investors expect. And it was born. Today, we're 4 years in. We've had market-leading returns. We're the first and only crypto hedge fund that has a license by VARA in Dubai, in the UAE, which is probably the most difficult regulator to deal with, but also at the same time, build this institutional-grade business that a lot of investors want. Was it easy? Absolutely not. But do I believe this is the way to go? Absolutely.
Why did you pick Dubai to obtain your license?
Over the last couple of years, I've been very privileged to work with many regulators and central banks in not only learning about crypto policies, but in many cases drafting these rules and actually helping them shape those rules. For example, I was for many years in Hong Kong. I used to be on the advisory board of a regulator there. I helped draft regulations around the world, from the Bahamas to many others in the Middle East. But what I found interesting in Dubai is Dubai set up the world's first crypto specialized regulator. Again, they did this actually a couple of years ago when especially the US market was closed. And the idea is the industry is so novel with some complex and often quite unique needs. Let's create a regulator that is focused on this industry, that can not only properly regulate it, but also properly supervise it. That's what Dubai has done. To put things in perspective right now, even as a hedge fund, as a crypto hedge fund, the majority of my counterparties are 1 minute walk away from me. The Dubai regulator now has hundreds of applications that are pending. Pretty much a lot of the big firms now have got their license there. And Dubai has genuinely become a global crypto hub. I think where Dubai, and obviously the country as well, the United Arab Emirates, including Abu Dhabi, including Ras Al Khaimah and other emirates within the country, were very smart in grabbing this opportunity. The way I see right now, a lot of firms are doing TradFi in crypto, are going to Abu Dhabi. A lot of, let's say, traditional asset managers that want to get into crypto are going to the IFC. Crypto native firms are coming to Dubai with VARA. And DAOs and some of the non-regulated activities are moving to Ras Al Khaimah. So the industry is growing tremendously quickly. And I think we have to give hats off to Dubai that was able to capture this opportunity and provide to the industry what we always ask for, which is very clear regulations and a level playing field that we can come and start and run our businesses without any surprises that pop up, but actually with clarity that we need to actually drive businesses forward.
Every market, basically every jurisdiction, how would you rate the different regulation across the different markets?
As a lawyer, I by background, I'm generally interested in crypto policy and crypto regulations because I really believe that crypto regulations, if done properly, could be tremendous catalyst to the industry. And actually the UAE is a great example of how literally a country that had very little crypto 3 years ago now has literally thousands of crypto firms that are there. So it's been quite remarkable how they operated. I believe that the future of digital assets, the industry wants these regulations, and there have been numerous examples, whether it's in Asia, for example, places like Hong Kong have tried to put some frameworks. I would argue in many cases now is too stringent. To the other extreme, like places like Singapore, where literally there's the regulatory framework in many cases is if you're doing only crypto, there's nothing to regulate you, unfortunately or fortunately. So that's one extreme. There's two examples in Asia. In Europe with MiCA, it is what it is. I think MiCA may create a European bubble where firms that want to operate in Europe will obviously get their MiCA license, and there will be a MiCA ecosystem, which is quite sizable, to be fair. And then I think when it comes to the Middle East, places like Vara in Dubai, DJM Abu Dhabi, Raqqa and Ras Al Khaimah will often attract the firms that want looking for a global hub, where they come there, they operate their businesses globally, where from a time zone perspective, you could easily cover the world in a normal business day. You're one flight away from everywhere. You have the infrastructure and everything that people need to operate. So I think places, I'm extremely bullish on the UAE as a global crypto hub. And I believe for the next couple of years, the UAE will play a big role. The big ones that I'm watching right now is what's going to happen in the US. I think the UK, unfortunately, was a bit too late, and we're seeing the impact now. With the US, it's going to be very interesting to see if and how the regulations change in the US, what type of businesses will move there, what type of businesses that had moved out will come back, and how is that ecosystem going to work. And by the way, it's also important to understand it's not only crypto regulations. Crypto regulations are one thing, but there's often other elements that play into as well. People often want stability, security. People want low taxes, or taxes that are proportionate to what you're getting. And then people also need to work. You need to be able to get visas. I've seen this in many cases where a country will come up, like great system, even in crypto regulation. The US is a very good example where if you're American, it's not a problem. But if you're trying to bring international talent in the US, for example, we saw it recently with the H-1B visa scandal, it's very difficult to bring talent. So the countries are able to have this in place and can move fast, can be agile, have not only the vision, but the execution capabilities will win. So when I look at the world today, and if I was a betting man, I remain extremely bullish on the UAE and countries that have this agility, vision, and execution capabilities.
What do you think about the current state of tokenization? Is it hype only, according to you, or do you see a future for this use case?
I've been looking at tokenization, and we've been calling it numerous different terms over the years. We used to call it security tokens, tokenization, now it's real world assets, and the term changes every couple of years. I was extremely bullish in 2018, 19, even 2020 about the world of tokenization, and I've been wrong. And multiple times I've been on TV believing that year was going to be the year of tokenization, and I've been completely off over the years. I have to say, I was expecting things to move slowly, and I was wrong again, because things actually started moving faster than I expected it. I'm very pleasantly surprised of the level of interest in tokenization when it comes to treasuries, for example. I'm very impressed to see the level of tokenization happening in genuine real-world assets. And how people are using them. Whether my timing is right of how fast it's going to move, time will tell. But I'm a big believer that in the future everything will be tokenized. I think the part that will become interesting to watch is under which even jurisdiction that will fall. Will we have crypto regulators oversee that? Will it be traditional securities regulators who will look at it? And so that's what I'm paying a lot of attention to how the oversight of this will happen, but for sure in my mind, tokenization is here, and it's just a natural way to go, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that we have such a big segment of the investing potential public that is completely excluded, because in many cases they don't have the minimums. They're not able to access a lot of assets. Think about a big building, for example. There's an illiquidity discount. I cannot buy this entire building, but maybe I can buy 1/10,000th of it. And at least I'm able to get access to the commercial real estate market. So for all these reasons, I'm extremely bullish on the tokenization market, and I think it's going to happen. The other big question to watch is, where is this going to happen? Right? So I'm seeing countries right now do anything from, looking at the real estate market to putting their land titles. Of course, we're seeing what's happening on treasuries. So for sure, tokenization will happen. What instruments will be the most popular will be interesting to watch. But for example, the funds industry is a good example. I'm convinced that in the next couple of years, people will literally buy a lot of their funds units by real world assets as tokenized instruments.
And what's your take on the increasing adoption of stablecoins?
Stablecoins are right now probably the killer use case that we've had in crypto. I mean, to put things in perspective, on January 1, 2020, so really at the beginning of COVID, there was literally less than $5 billion in stablecoins. I mean, we forget that. This is 5 years ago, it was less than $5 billion in stablecoins, and now we're over 200 billion. So this element is quite incredible how quickly stablecoins have been adopted. Where I think it's important to focus on stablecoins is what are the uses people are doing it. Being in Dubai, I spend a lot of time in emerging markets. In emerging markets, it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. If you're living in countries like Turkey, if you're living in countries like Argentina, a big chunk of Africa, this is literally your access to US dollars. I think the one thing with stable coins that people underestimate is how much international trade takes place on stable coins. I'm surprised not more people talk about it, but I think if you're a company in Malaysia doing business with a company in the Middle East or in Latin America, I mean, you're not using the SWIFT network. I mean, the bank transfers, the delays, the process, it's so clunky. There's a lot of this activity that is taking place on stable coins. And I think the crypto firms are able to leverage this. The TradFi access and the crypto access are benefiting from it right now. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, it's going to continue. The usage will continue. The part of stable coins that I'm watching right now is what is the future yield-bearing stable coins, right? So right now, if I have a stable coin, the company behind is making the money. Is this value creation or this yield in practice that belongs actually to the person who's holding those stable coins? Will it come back to the users? I think that's going to be critical year the next 12 months to see what happens.
And it remains to be seen. My favorite moment, a Proust questionnaire for Henri. Bitcoin, stocks, or bonds?
Oh, for sure, Bitcoin, 100%. I mean, obviously, I'm a big believer in Bitcoin, and I really believe we're going to look back at this era of the early days of digital assets. Our kids will ask us, Dad, how was it when Bitcoin was only $100,000? How was it when the crypto industry was only $3 trillion? I mean, we are really living right now a historic moment in the history of finance and the history of money, and our kids and our grandchildren will study the period that we are in. And I think it's a privilege that not only we have a chance to witness it, but also play a role in shaping it, and I'm grateful every day for this.
A tricky one, ETF or self-custody?
For the average person, I would say the ETF has great benefits, and in CoinShares, I've been doing tremendous work in this space.
Thank you.
But I think for some crypto-native folks, self-custody may have an option. And the same way, you can go buy your gold via ETFs, or you can go hold your gold bars at home. Personally, I believe that the average user is probably better off using an ETF, especially if they're not very technical, they don't want to bother with self-custody. I think that's one area I actually have to say that CoinShares has done tremendous work over the years in pioneering and being ahead of the curve on the space.
Banks or exchanges?
Really depends, but I would say it's ironic, but I have probably more trust in many crypto exchanges than I have on banks. Yes, banks have a regulatory regime, they've been there for a while, but I think I'm shocked every day of the fees that a lot of banks are able to pay to customers, the terrible level of service. I remember when I gave the first TEDx talk on fintech years ago. This must have been 2015. It's available on YouTube. My first question that I asked my audience was, do you enjoy your banking experience? And the audience started laughing. And unfortunately, now all these years later, if we give a speech and I ask the audience if they enjoyed their banking experience, the answer is still probably no. So I think where the crypto exchanges have been quite good is actually, I think, the level of service, what you can do, the fact that it operates all the time. And to the credit to a lot of crypto exchanges now, there's a lot of proof of reserves are issued, and there's different, more transparency. But, I think there's a lot of good things that are being done by crypto exchanges that banks could probably learn from.
Regulation first or innovation first?
If I changed my view on this over the years. If you had asked me the question in 2016, 17, my view was we need to have some level of regulatory clarity to the crypto industry to basically grow and be able to build. I would say I've changed my view over the years, and I was wrong, I believe. I really believe that there is merit, if you're an entrepreneur now, to focusing on innovation first, because the regulations are never going to be able to move fast enough. So really innovation first, but of course, not be completely careless. So for example, even when you innovate, unfortunately, I see a lot of entrepreneurs that completely play the ostrich, but I think there's a basic, regulation compliance that you can put in place that does not harm innovation. So for example, even if you're doing a DeFi protocol or you're involved in any kind of digital activity, there are certain basic things that are required, very basic KYC, making sure that nobody's you're not interacting with the known wallets that are basically linked to illicit activity, and that does not really necessarily slow down your innovation.
Dubai, Hong Kong, or Montreal?
Definitely Dubai. Montreal is great. My family's there. I'm very grateful to Montreal. It's a great city where I think there's a place to grow up. If there's one thing I could improve about Canada, I would love people to be more ambitious, be more global, have more tinker bigger. Unfortunately, I find in Canada, and especially in Montreal and Quebec, everybody's comfortable. Nobody wants to rock the boat. Everybody's happy Friday to clock off, go spend the weekend, relax. I wish there was a bit more ambition and bold, visionary thinking in Montreal and in Canada as well. Hong Kong, I love it. I'm a very, very bullish, even long-term China. I studied in China, I speak Chinese, and I really believe in the future of the Chinese nation and China as a country, and Hong Kong obviously plays a big role in there. But I would say the next decade, I'm extremely bullish in the UAE as a country. I think we're entering every 10, 15 years, certain countries will really rise. And I believe now the next decade, the UAE and the region, I would say to a certain extent, because of very visionary leadership, execution capabilities, and the ability of being bold and thinking big. And when you have these three components together, you become unstoppable.
A sports one to finish, Montreal Canadiens or Andre Agassi?
Oh, 100% the Montreal Canadiens. I've been a big hockey fan. I'm a big tennis fan as well, and I like Henri Arslanian as well, and I love his Armenian connection there as well. But I'm a big Montreal Canadiens fan. Actually, every time I go to Canada, I always try to go to a hockey game. I still wake up early in the morning to watch my hockey games. I will never miss a playoff game. The one thing from Canada that I miss actively is going to a live hockey game. But c'est la vie.
Henri, it was great having you.
Thank you very much.